Ignoring the dull H and retired back, Selena started cleaning the last office space of the day. It had been a demanding day indeed. First, she had to do a thorough cleaning of the director's office, then the floor and accounting departments. Selena understood that the main source of her fatigue wasn't physical labor, but rather the emotional strain. Why were they all so annoyed with her? Yes, she couldn't refuse to hire a candidate who didn't quite meet her preferences. She couldn't be blamed for the fact that the director at the time had glanced at her resume, winked at her, Selena, and ordered her to hire the candidate. And since then, he greeted her warmly every morning. But he greeted everyone, right? Well, all the others were not janitors. Although, what was there to envy? They had higher positions and bigger salaries, and she hadn't even tried to apply to university, even though she really wanted to, and her mom insisted on it. But what was there to insist on if they needed money for her mom's treatment? All of Selena's salary went towards that. How could her mom get treatment if she didn't go to work? Well, she would go to university someday. Dark times in life weren't eternal after all. Selena, why are you so slow? How long can you fuss around? You still need to go over the area around the director's office. Important visitors are coming tomorrow, said the head of the ward department, her voice full of irritation. She was Selena's main tormentor. Seeing the displeased look on her face when the director was mentioned, Selena wanted to say everything to her face, but she kept silent and went to clean the area around the office. There was indeed plenty of work there. The wind had scattered leaves, prematurely dried by the heat, pigeon feathers, and transparent plastic bags. But here, away from judgmental eyes and mocking smiles, Selena's fatigue disappeared instantly. She worked with pleasure. In reality, she loved keeping things clean. Selena possessed a rare and precious quality in a world that wasn't always friendly and welcoming. She could see and find beauty. Perhaps that's why she had broken under the weight of life's hardships that had fallen on her. The area around the office was now cleaned, only the trash bins needed to be emptied. Suddenly, as she knocked one of them over into a plastic bag, Selena saw something that definitely didn't belong there. It was an expensive leather wallet, clearly belonging to a well-off owner. The contents of the find confirmed her suspicions: business cards, bank cards, money, a lot of money. Selena couldn't turn that much in half a year. The initial temptation was strong, but she managed to resist and regain her composure. What if it was some criminal case, or what if it belonged to someone close to the director? The latter thought played a decisive role in her next actions. Since it was the company's premises, the decision regarding findings on its territory should be made by the company's leader. Selena resolutely put the wallet in the pocket of her work coat and started collecting her cleaning equipment. The next morning, Selena went straight to the director's office. "Selena, hello," the director greeted with a broad smile. "Come in, please. What can I do for you?" Selena sighed quietly and said, "Mason, I found this near our office dumpster yesterday," stumbling slightly as she spoke and placed the wallet on his desk. "Well, so someone's been littering our premises with money," the director joked, starting to go through the contents, examining business cards and bank cards. "It seems we have an underground millionaire in our circles." Suddenly, this playful tone lost some of its cheerfulness. The director fell silent abruptly, turned pale, and froze as he stared at one of the bank cards. He rotated it in his hands, examining it from all angles and sinking into deep thought. "Who did you give your card to, by the way?" "Oh, Molly, who did you give your card to? The one I regularly transfer money to, by the way." "Oh, Molly, how can you make such a mistake? I always suspected you were insincere with me, and now you turn out to be foolish too." But why did your lover lose his wallet, or did he not lose it at all? And why did it end up in the trash bin? Thank you, Selena. Mason finally returned to reality. You did the right thing by bringing me this find. Expect a bonus for your honesty and integrity in your paycheck. The director dismissed Selena, but she sensed that something was troubling him. The repercussions of Selena's visit to the bus became apparent by the end of the day. The team was animatedly discussing the janitor's morning visit to the director, connecting the dots between her visit to the director's office and the directive to give her a bonus. The collective came to a rather unsettling conclusion: she's a snitch. Now, even those who had previously paid no attention to Selena looked at her unfavorably. Selena eagerly awaited the end of the workday to finally let her tears flow at home and find solace with her bill of the book, the most effective and accessible means of emotional recovery for her. Mason, too, found it hard to focus in his director's office. Although he tried earnestly, after noticing that he had read the same document 3 times without comprehending it at all, he cursed, closed his laptop, and decided to go home. I need to look her in the eye before she goes to sleep, he thought angrily about Selena. Molly was in the living room when she saw her husband. She smiled and leaned in for a kiss, but this time her husband was not in the mood for romance. Molly, maybe you can explain this to me, he asked, taking his wife's bank card from his jacket pocket. I'm waiting for an explanation. Molly flared up, then quickly regained her composure. What do you mean? This is my bank card. It was stolen from me recently. I didn't have a chance to tell you. Oh, so it was stolen, Mason sarcastically replied. You know you didn't block it as you should have in case of theft or loss. It's still active, and I even topped it up recently, by the way. Maybe you can also explain to me which beef would put it in a wallet with money and then throw it into the trash bin. You have no idea. Stop playing dumb with me. Molly, feeling cornered, thought that the best defense was a strong offense. Why are you bothering me with silly riddles? What money? What wallet? I lost it, and I don't know anything else. Her voice began to carry obvious hysterical notes. Seeing that the conversation was going nowhere, Mason left, slamming the door behind him, and headed to his office. George, hello, he dialed the number of an old friend. I have a matter here. I seem to recall you had a good private detective in mind. Can you give me his number? I really need it this time. The detective turned out to be just what he needed. Within a couple of days, Mason was looking with disgust at some rather explicit photos of his wife kissing a young man. Molly, it seems you have a taste for younger men. He's clearly an opportunist. You've really hit rock bottom, dear. What more did you want? He thought to himself. The drive back home seemed endless. Mason did his best to restrain the furious urge to step on the gas on the empty road. Stay calm, Mason, stay calm, he reassured himself. That's all they want. After you, there will be quite some left. So slow down. Come on, slow down. Your money will come in handy for better purposes. There was no strength left to talk to his wife, who was sitting in the living room as usual. Mason threw a leather folder onto the soft couch and silently spread the photos in front of Molly. He reclined in the chair, watching her reaction. He had regained his composure, but a slight blush still betrayed the recent anger. Molly stared at him in confusion, not receiving any explanations, casually picked up one photograph. Her lower lip was slightly pouted, giving her face a playful and somewhat capricious expression. Why did I always like this? Wondered the man sitting across from her. Was I blind or something? She's a selfish, spoiled, and utterly shameless woman, incapable of feeling not just love but even basic gratitude for a comfortable and trouble-free life. Where was I looking when I married her? There was no answer to this rhetorical question. In the meantime, Molly, having examined all the photos, looked quite crestfallen. "Darling," she said guiltily, "don't be mad at me. It happened accidentally." "Were you out of your mind?" Mason asked sarcastically. "No, not at all," she replied. "It's just that you're always busy. You have your work, and a woman, you know, she really wants to be admired, to be given attention. I didn't love him at all, not even a bit, but he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. He's attentive, sensitive, and in a lot of debt. I gave him my credit card back then because he didn't have any cash. He promised me that once he pays it off, he'll return the card. But his wallet got stolen." Molly was already crying heavily, gradually realizing the incredible foolishness of her actions and what consequences this folly can bring upon her. "Mason, you'll forgive me, won't you? Come on, say you will. I'll never make such a stupid mistake again. Never. I really care about you, you know," she pleaded. "Don't try so hard." "It's too late," her husband replied coldly. "But why? We're such a beautiful couple. We've been together for so long. Things happen between spouses. People are not without sin," she argued. "Yes, things happen," Mason agreed, "but not everyone stays married after that. Tomorrow, it would be better for you to move in with your parents. I'll file for divorce myself. A lawyer will handle all the formalities. From now on, we'll only communicate through him. I really hope not to see you again, at most in court if necessary." With these words, he stood up, indicating that the conversation was over, and stepping heavily on the stairs, went up to his office. The house fell into a somber silence, interrupted only by Molly's bitter sobs. Selena was enthusiastically watering the lawn around the office. She enjoyed her work. The water provided a refreshing feeling in the scorching heat. The unfriendly office staff stayed within the building's walls, and here she was, Selena, alone with splashes of water, lush green grass, and her own thoughts. She particularly took care of the fragrant flower bed with colorful flowers. As she worked, she noticed a boy sitting on a bench near the office. Unable to resist, she directed a thin stream of water at the uninvited guest and laughed when the boy jumped in surprise. "Why are you drenching yourself?" he exclaimed, waving his arms. "It's so hot." "For you," Selena smiled, sitting down next to the boy to catch her breath. "Why did you go for a walk in this heat? Or is it even hotter at home?" "Yeah, it's even hotter at home," the boy grumbled. "Besides, my stepdad still lives there. I don't get along with him much," he added vaguely. "Is he mistreating you?" Selena asked sympathetically. "No, he doesn't beat me," the boy replied. "He's afraid of social services and custody battles. He has nowhere else to go, you see," the boy explained like an adult. "But in reality, he doesn't need me at all. I just get in the way of his interactions and relationships with rich women. He confuses their heads, makes them fall in love with him, and then deceives them. He's so polite with them, but he always treats me disrespectfully." "What does he do for a living?" Selena inquired, genuinely concerned about the boy's fate. "Work," the boy scoffed, venting the long-held bitterness. "These rich ladies give him money, he buys me lunches with their money, and I can hardly eat. He even punishes me and scolds me for speaking out against him. But it's all right, right? I got back at him." I stole one of those ladies' wallets and threw it into the trash. Now he's walking around angry, and I'd rather stay home as little as possible." Sighing from the expressed emotions, the little avenger began to kick the sand by the bench, clearly not regretting his actions. "You know what?" Selena finally broke the silence, surprised. "Let's go with me. It seems your story could be very helpful to someone, and who knows, maybe he can help you too." With these words, holding hands, they headed straight to the director's office. "Who is this, Selena?" The director had been gloomy and uncommunicative lately. "Another find." "This seems to be the same find," the girl replied gently. "Please talk to him, he'll tell you everything." "I'll go, I still have a lot of work." Pushing the boy towards the director's desk, Selena discreetly disappeared behind the door, leaving the two of them alone. "What's your name?" Mason addressed the young visitor. "Tell me your story, Selena has piqued my interest." "My name is Jacob." The boy introduced himself fearlessly and proceeded to recount the story of the discarded wallet in full detail. Mason looked thoughtfully at Jacob. "Yes, the boy has an unfortunate fate. Is there really no one else besides this opportunist?" "Where's your mom?" the director inquired. "She passed away a year ago," the boy said sadly. "She had pneumonia. Everyone else gets treated, but they couldn't save her." Once again, the journey home for Mason was very difficult. The audacious yet vulnerable Jacob occupied his thoughts. The boy's mother died, and his stepfather is a swindler and a fraud, and the kid is actually good, clever, Mason thought to himself. Mason loved children. He might have had many of his own if Molly hadn't been so obsessed with her own image and figure. Convincing her to have children had proved impossible. Perhaps she was simply incapable of caring for anyone other than herself. "Yes, my beloved wife didn't even want to have a dog, and I, the fool, kept hoping for something," Mason mused with frustration. And suddenly realized, both Jacob and I have suffered greatly from this couple. Unlike me, he won't be able to get rid of them himself. A simple and clear solution to the problem suddenly dawned on him, lifting a heavy burden of unprocessed grief from his soul. On the front seat, the phone vibrated. Mason picked up the receiver. "Robert, hello. How are divorce proceedings going?" "It's good that everything is progressing." "Robert, can you also help me with another matter?" "No, it's not a wedding or a marriage contract. I'm not ready for that yet. Can you assist me with adopting a boy, 8 years old?" "No, there won't be any problems with the parents. His father is absent, his mother passed away, and his stepfather is a social misfit. He'd do anything for housing and would abandon the boy." "Thank you, Robert. I knew you wouldn't refuse." That night, unlike many previous ones, Mason slept well, seeing in his dreams vivid and happy memories of his childhood. Selena stayed at work later than usual. Half the day was spent on doctor's appointments and running around pharmacies with her mother. And there was no extra janitor in the office. Sitting in her utility room, organizing supplies, she suddenly heard muffled voices arguing in whispers. "Are you out of your mind? This is illegal. Do you want me to end up in prison?" protested a male voice. "Oh, you darling, you want to stay clean. What about the fact that you're already up to your neck in this? Who's got a record for robbery? You who couldn't get a job with that record. You who kept their mouth shut and didn't reveal your record when you joined the company. Me. And now you want to argue instead of doing your job," the woman spoke angrily. "Oh, ungrateful one, I covered for you in this drug trade, in exchange for your silence. You think you're keeping quiet for free? Now you suddenly have a taste for murder. You're not risking any less than me," the man argued. Let's see whose wife turned to the director. Mine, who will have to settle scores if anything goes wrong. Also me. And what do they need from you? Not much, just drive out to the first intersection outside the city at night and spill a canister of oil on the highway. He always takes the turn at high speed. You do it, get paid for the job. But if you refuse, I'll show your file to the director tomorrow. I might even earn a bonus for diligence, for vigilance, the woman threatened. Well, you women are something else, I'll tell you that. One wants to inherit her husband's money, afraid of losing it all, the other one wants to make a profit out of it. How much do you need them for? You have no husband, no children, no elderly parents. Where will you spend it all? The man complained. Don't you count my money, it's none of your business. If you refuse, I'll report you not only to the director but also to the police. You'll be charged with drug trafficking, and you know exactly what kind of drug trafficking, the woman replied firmly. The male voice cursed, and in the end, reluctantly said, all right, get the oil. Selena sat there, holding her breath, shocked by what she had just heard. The voices were all too familiar to her. The male voice belonged to the perpetually gloomy and unsociable security guard who had joined the office after Selena started working there. And the female voice, there could be no mistake with a female voice, it belonged to her tormentor, the head of the whore department. Selena's hands trembled, her thoughts became jumbled, fear for herself, information, the inability to comprehend the depths of human depravity, and horror at the cruelty of familiar people all swirled within her. She needed to run, she needed to do something to somehow alert the director. But where could she run? If she made a sound, the perpetrators would know they had a witness. It's hard to say how long Selena sat there, holding her breath and trying not to move. Time seemed to stand still as it attempted to contain the unfolding events. Finally, the key to the whore department's door turned, and the familiar click of high heels echoed up the stairs. Selena had memorized that sound, it never heralded anything good. But now, especially so, she took a deep breath and began to think about how to warn the director of the impending danger. Time was running out, perhaps the perpetrators wouldn't wait until the next evening to pour the dangerous soil. Suddenly, an idea struck her. She quickly closed the utility room door, then quietly crept into the director's office. One of the privileges of a janitor was having keys to all the offices. The thought that crossed her mind was bitter. I hope the director hasn't run out of business cards, there are only a few left. Selena took out one business card and, with trembling hands, dialed the director's number. Mason, hello, this is Selena, the janitor. Please don't hang up. I just overheard something. They want to stage an accident for you, they're planning to spill oil at the turn outside of town. They mentioned your wife, it seems like she's involved. Who? Oh, I can't say any more. Selena hung up after delivering the message. Hearing measured footsteps in the corridor, she quickly hid under the massive office desk, pulling a chair in front of her for extra cover. The same security guard slowly conducted his rounds for the office. When he reached the reception area and noticed the open door, he entered the office and turned on the lights. Selena, hidden beneath the desk, felt as though she had already died. Her heart was pounding so loudly, it seemed like he must surely hear it. But after inspecting the room from the doorway and finding nothing suspicious, the security guard turned off the lights and left, locking the door behind him. Selena lay on the soft carpet to regain her composure. How could she escape the office now? She could spend the night in the utility room, but she had to warn her mother urgently. Her mother couldn't afford to worry. Anything could happen during her daughter's absence overnight. She needed to call, warn, come up with an excuse about an urgent non-routine task that required her presence at night. Maybe her mother would believe it, but her mother's phone didn't answer. "The subscriber is out of the coverage area," the voicemail cheerfully informed her. Mom forgot to charge her phone again. Selena fought desperately. It happened frequently with her mother. She just couldn't get used to the fact that, unlike simple button phones, smartphones require daily charging, and she often forgot to plug in the charger. She needed to get back home urgently since the doors were inaccessible. She would have to climb out of the window. Fortunately, there was a fire escape near the director's office. If she could quietly cross the lawn, the petite figure of the girl might squeeze through the narrow gap among the iron bars, leaving all this nightmare behind. Reaching the fire escape turned out to be not too difficult, as the wild grapevines wound around the walls had become quite sturdy. Trying not to rustle the leaves, Selena descended the stairs and ran across the lawn toward the fence. As she was about to squeeze through the gap and was relieved to have made it through unnoticed, she suddenly felt a heavy gaze upon her. She quickly turned around and saw the security guard on the path, staring at her intensely and ominously. Instinctively fearing for her life, she dashed toward the bus stop. He figured it out. He knows now, the only thought echoed in her mind. He's going to kill me. Her heart was pounding intensely in the absence of pursuit behind her. Her fear only made it worse, but for some reason, there was no pursuit. There are security cameras everywhere. It's not allowed here, she thought with a bitter realization. The last bus appeared out of the darkness as if on cue. Selena rushed through the open door and collapsed onto the seat, trying to catch her breath. What's going to happen now? There is no evidence, and the overheard conversation can easily be dismissed as slander. They'll probably cancel the accident for now, but that's just temporary. But how will they deal with the witness? Detective novels Selena had read never promised anything good for accidental witnesses. After catching her breath and still unable to come up with a plan, Selena made her way along the dark alley toward her home. The windows in her apartment were lit. Her mother was clearly worried. And suddenly, a desperate cry from her mother, "Sweetie." Selena jerked abruptly, and something heavy and crushing hit her from behind, plunging her into total darkness. Gradually, the darkness receded through its thick veil. Distant voices could be heard. At first, one sounded anxious, the other professionally calm. "Robert, you understand that this girl was hurt because of me." It's a relief that her mother called out. The blow was a glancing one. "She saved my life, and now she's lying unconscious." "Mason, calm down, it's just a minor concussion. She's young, she'll recover. The girl has beautiful hair, there won't be any visible scars." Thank the heavens that she stayed late in the utility room that evening, otherwise, you would never have figured out who you were divorcing or working with oil on the road. You know, it is a nasty business. And believe me, it works the same way, completely independently of whether your wife spills it or that scoundrel. Now everything secretive has become glaringly obvious, making both the divorce process and the purge of criminal employees much easier. You're a cynic, Robert. And you're ready to go to any lengths to achieve your goals. It's professional defamation, my dear, otherwise, in my line of work, you'd have gone insane long ago. Oh, our fairy seems to be waking up. Mason's very pale face appeared through the dissipating darkness. Mason, Selena, and the ironically genial face of an unfamiliar middle-aged man. Selena attempted a weak smile and joked, "I guess I managed to survive after all." But then another face entered her field of vision, the lean and stern face under a doctor's cap. "You'll heal soon," it said reassuringly and categorically, instantly assuring all the visitors out of Selena's room. In the morning, Selena's mother was allowed to see her. Her mother tried to remain composed, although it was evident she struggled. "How are you feeling, sweetie? Is your head hurting badly?" "I'm getting better. My head is still spinning a bit and it's ringing somehow." "How about you?" "You shouldn't worry. I'm hardly worried anymore. The doctors reassure me that everything will be fine with you. I was so scared last night, but God was merciful and gave me strength. Don't you worry about a thing, just rest and recover. I'll take care of everything." "Now, Mom, how can I just lie here? I spent my entire salary on medicine. How are you managing?" "Now, darling, don't you worry about that at all. Your boss, Mason, is a golden man. He immediately said there would be no need for us to worry, and he keeps his word. You just focus on getting better, my dear, and get plenty of rest." Selena's mother affectionately stroked Selena's hair. "Mason, can you talk?" The calm voice of lawyer Robert sounded concerned. "Yes, of course. Is something unexpected happening, Robert?" "Just unexpected, very, very unexpected, I'd say." Robert's composure was clearly disturbed. "Robert, please don't keep me in suspense. Explain already, explain this. I believe this is something you should explain to me. Do you know who the father of the boy you're planning to adopt is?" "I'm sorry, Robert, how could I possibly know that? I've only seen his stepfather in photos." "But who is his father?" "I came to you for a paternity test not by chance. You are with a 99.9 certainty Jacob's biological father," the lawyer calmly stated, and Mason felt like the ground had been swept from beneath him. Dear God, but how is that possible? Wait, what about his mother? Why is his mother? It was all he could manage to say into the phone. "Ennis Smith," came the response from the other end, just as composed, though. "That ring a bell for you?" "Of course, it does," Mason replied, feeling devastated. And a playful, carefree, and without a care in the world, a college love without any pretensions of a serious relationship. He had been leaving the city then due to a job placement, and she had never considered leaving her hometown. Deep down, Mason sometimes even envied her restrained zest for life. It didn't work that way for him. He was too serious for absolute carefreeness about the future. Why hadn't she told me she was pregnant? Why had she never reached out in all these years? Although Anna's live for the day philosophy had never made sense in an ordinary person's logic. So this scoundrel had tied another one of his women to himself. What did these women see in him? Where did women get this idiotic passion for immoral characters? Mason regretted quitting smoking. It would have been really helpful right now. Jacob, or by the way, how would he react to this shocking news? Jacob took the news surprisingly calmly. The shared resentment towards his stepfather, Mason pushed aside any possible grievances and claims against his biological father. After listening to Mason's convoluted narrative, Jacob wrinkled his nose, scratched his head, and philosophically said, "They say everything happens for the best. We've all been through a lot, of course, but now I have a real father, and you have a real son." He glanced at Mason sideways with a hint of a smile. Mason couldn't find words to respond. He simply approached the boy and affectionately hugged him. Jacob pressed his slender body against his father, and they stood there silently, not needing words to understand the depth of their connection. Selena entered the familiar office door, shaking off the drops of the lingering September rain from her jacket. The director was already waiting for her in his office. "Good morning, Selena. I'm glad to see you back. Is your health all right?" The director nodded with concern. Selena nodded in confirmation, trying not to smile too broadly. "Yes, I'm fine." So, what's up? I heard there's a vacancy in the marketing department, she said, sounding lively. That's correct, we just had a manager resign. Would you like to join the marketing department for an internship? The director spoke in his dry, standard phrases, trying in vain to conceal the joy in his eyes. Are you ready? I'm ready, Selena replied enthusiastically, and then asked, how's Jacob doing? Jacob often asks about you, Selena. He seems to really miss those refreshing bursts from the garden hose. How long are they going to be in there? I can't wait any longer, Jacob fidgeted impatiently, waiting for Mason and Selena in the medical center corridor. This visit was very important because it would determine Jacob's future sibling, a brother or a sister. It was a crucial question. A brother would be great, of course, but they'd be too young to play together. He couldn't ride a bike with a baby, and climbing trees would have to wait. No, he would grow up eventually, but by then, Jacob wouldn't need a playmate. A sister, on the other hand, was an entirely different story. You see, girls were clueless, they couldn't always stand up for themselves, and anyone could deceive them. Jacob would be her protector and guardian forever, and not just any protector but a lifelong one. He had been through it, and he could handle it. The doors to the closed office suddenly swung open, releasing a jubilant Mason and Selena. So what do you say, Jacob? Asked Selena cheerfully. Jacob beamed with a sense of accomplishment, silently thinking, well done, parents. You didn't let me down. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.